Miami kicked off their playoff series versus Milwaukee on Sunday and pulled off the unexpected as the underdog found a way to steal a win, led by Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, and Bam Adebayo. A total team effort with big shots down the stretch. But a Tyler Herro injury could have an impact on the rest of the series. We break down the win and more in our Game 1 recap on Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, however you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Recording this after the Heat go into Milwaukee and beat the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks 130-117. They steal game one. Jimmy Butler with 35 points and 11 assists. Bam Adebayo stepping up with 22 points. In the Heat shot 60% from three-point range. But the big story here, David, is the injuries. Giannis exiting after 11 minutes with a lower back injury. Tyler Herro breaking his right hand in the second quarter. Herro's postseason is probably over, and Giannis's status is still TBD. Getting a report, Mike Budenholzer, the Bucks coach, saying that Giannis is quote-unquote clear after x-rays. The team's going to monitor his status over the next few days. Game 2 is on Wednesday. But before we get to Giannis and the impact of that injury, the impact of Tyler Herro's injury on the rest of the series, David, can we chalk up this Game 1 win for the Miami Heat to Giannis getting hurt after 11 minutes of him playing? Or is there more to glean from this Miami win?
I think it was a total effort. Miami was down 4-2 with about a couple minutes into the game, and they controlled the rest of the pace from that point on. And I know it's a lot easier to do so without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not a knock on him whatsoever, but I think that they were also winning the game by double digits when he exited the game. And although he was a little uncomfortable, he was trying to fight through that fluke injury. He fell as Kevin Love tried to draw a charge, and Giannis was up in the air, kind of made contact and then fell awkwardly onto his back. And yet, I think Miami had a pretty solid game plan overall. Jimmy Butler attacking early on, being aggressive, kicking it out eventually to three-point shooters who knocked it down. Again, you pointed out the 60% three-point rate. That's not something that's likely to be duplicated. That is as good as Miami has shot all season. That's probably their season high, I would imagine, by a pretty fair amount. And yet, I think they still did everything that they were supposed to do. They played defense. They understood the moment. All the things that we had questioned about this particular team, whether or not they had a sense of urgency, well, that was completely on display in this game one. Even when Milwaukee, led by Chris Middleton, who had a phenomenal game in Giannis's absence, they closed the gap to 2, mostly because of Middleton having some incredible shots. And then Miami seemed to understand, okay, we cannot let this game slide. This is too good an opportunity to steal a win in Milwaukee. We might not get as good a chance on the road as this one. And they understood it. And then everybody wound up playing their role perfectly, whether it was Jimmy hitting a big shot or Bam finally getting it going in the restricted area, or, Gabe Vincent hitting from the perimeter. Kevin Love, his minutes were so impactful. I know we'll talk about him in the next segment, but I think everybody wound up stepping up, playing their game. And I don't know, I can't say for certain that, Giannis's, being absent should impacted the game or not. It's clear that it would have, but the shots that they took, maybe there would have been a little bit less contested with Giannis there because he commands so much attention, and certainly in transition, he's very, very dangerous. He attacks the rim with such ferocity, but Miami did everything they could, regardless of who was out on the floor. So you have to give them credit for this.
You have to. The Heat, the level of urgency that they came out with was appropriate given the stakes of this game. They knew, hey, like the only chance that the Heat have in this series is they've got to steal one of these first 2 games at home.
Yep.
When the Bucks are at home, in other words, and they came out with a punch. And Spo before the game kept saying like everything kind of simplified with the short turnaround. Right? They didn't have a week off like the Milwaukee Bucks did to kind of scout their opponent and kind of figure it out. And no, it was like a 2-day break, and they have to go out after an intense win over the Bulls to get in to the playoffs and get this number 8 seed. They turn around, fly to Milwaukee, have to take on the best team in the NBA. And I actually do think that that helped them. It simplified things. It's just like, okay,
Navy SEALs,
like Navy SEALs, right? Drop us off. Let's compete. And they acted like it. It was the same starting lineup. No rotation changes, nothing. And it's pretty clear at this point that they're not going to go in that direction. They're going to play small. They're going to lean on their shooters. They're going to lean on guys like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin and Kevin Love trying to space the floor for Jimmy and for Bam. And tonight, that's exactly what happened. The fact that they shot 60% from three-point range has as much to do with Miami winning this game as Giannis only playing 11 minutes. I know a lot of Heat fans are going to say, well, the Heat were already up when Giannis was out. The Bucks were outscored by 9 points in the 11 minutes that Giannis did play. I don't care about that. I'm basically dismissing it. It was the second quarter when Giannis got hurt. Anything could have happened for the rest of that game. Like you said, the Bucks did make another push in that second half. I could care less if the Heat were up, down, or sideways when Giannis got hurt. Like, it doesn't matter to me. There was so much more game left. So, but that's just the score. My big takeaway was how Miami was playing, and they were playing with that urgency. They were getting to different layers of their offense, and it's something that the coaches and the players talk about all the time when they're not so one-dimensional, when it's not just Jimmy and Bam pick and roll, or Jimmy post up, or Tyler and Bam pick and roll, and all that, when they're kind of including different parts of their offense, and whether it's the corner threes for Caleb or Gabe, whether it's that pick and roll stuff, the Bam Adebayo getting to that free throw line jumper, Jimmy getting into those post ups, off ball cutting from Jimmy and Bam and Kevin Love and all these, they were incorporating all of that stuff. And that comes from off ball movement, good screen setting, rebounding, shot making the right pass, good to great shots, all that kind of coach speak stuff. That's where all that comes from. And so I thought that they came out with a very appropriate level of urgency, and that had as much to do with this Heat win as probably Giannis getting hurt. I don't think it could be overstated that you and I went into this game saying, how do the Heat win this series? How do they win a game? They got to shoot probably better than 50% from three-point range. I think we literally said that. They shot 60% tonight from three-point range. Giannis or no Giannis, the chances of you winning a playoff game when you shoot like that, 15 of 25 from distance like that, they go up exponentially. That goes without saying. So, yeah, a lot of different reasons why the Heat won this. But let's talk a little bit more about Giannis. Again, Mike Budenholzer saying that he's clear. The next game is Wednesday, giving the Bucks and Giannis ample time to sort of recover and get back from this thing. My expectation is that Giannis does return to this series, maybe as soon as Wednesday night's game. Yeah,
I wouldn't doubt it. With 2 days off, that's probably more than enough time. He'll be sore. The bigger concern for Milwaukee, and honestly, I want to make this point about Giannis, and then I really just want to revel in the Heat win, because so many people wrote off the team, whether it was fans of the team itself and everybody else in the media, including us. We didn't think they were going to be able to steal a win here, and here they are winning in game one in epic fashion. A franchise playoff high points for this team that has struggled offensively. They've never scored more points in in any playoff game in their franchise history. Not with a big three, not with Shaquille O'Neal, not with Dwayne Wade at an MVP level. Nothing compares to tonight's outing offensively. But Giannis, he'll probably be back. The bigger thing for them to monitor is whether or not he aggravates that injury again, because that would be more impactful if he winds up missing substantial time, perhaps even missing further games down the road. He'll probably be there for game 2.
Or if he's limited, right? Because he first got hurt and then kind of tried to stay in the game and was clearly not okay. Like, he was a non-factor when he was out there, after he got himself out, and then he had to check himself out again and did not return to that game. So look, we'll see what happens with Giannis, right? You never really know what this is going to be. Again, we're recording this minutes after the final buzzer, so we have no idea what's going to happen with him. But the Bucks without Giannis versus a Heat team, even without Tyler Herro, is, I think, a pretty even matchup, all things considered, because Jimmy Butler now is the best player in the series if there is no Giannis, or if there's a very limited version of Giannis. Even the Giannis to Jimmy gap is much more narrow. Bam Adebayo, if he could play and build off that second half that he had in game 1 and all that's, like, this series becomes a lot more even. I always like Milwaukee without Giannis. It feels to me like the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry era Raptors. It's like good players all across the board, but no legit superstar to kind of take them over the top. And we know how those Raptors teams kind of flamed out in the playoffs because they just didn't have that dude to go get it. And the Heat have that dude that goes and gets it in Jimmy Butler. So this thing becomes a lot more even, especially considering now that home court advantage is basically flipped with the Heat stealing a game in Milwaukee.
And look, Milwaukee, I've made this point before since the bubble and their first matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have always played Miami more dangerously without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think a byproduct of that in that bubble series was the fact that they had the personnel, whether it was Bam Adebayo, Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Jimmy Butler, to form that wall that we talked about in our preview of this series. And while again, it wasn't as much of an issue when they were getting swept by Milwaukee the following season, 2021, their third matchup without Giannis there, they get guys like Drew Holiday being more aggressive, taking more shots, and being such an offensive threat. Chris Middleton, he had a monster game. We probably don't see half that production if Giannis is out there. So there's a yin and yang there. There's a little give and take regarding the absence of Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think it impacts Milwaukee. I think it also helps them to a certain degree, but you can also make the argument that a lot of the shots they wound up taking, and they wound up taking a lot of shots from beyond the perimeter, 45, if I'm not mistaken. Those looks are probably a lot easier, a lot more wide open with Giannis on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks only had 46 points in the paint. The Heat had 62. That, you imagine that's a lot different if Giannis is playing. Both teams shooting over 50. Like, good shot making on both sides. Like, this is like the Bucks only shot 24% from 3-point range, but they shot 50% overall. Both teams basically shooting 50% or better from the mid-range, like long two area. I don't know that you can count on either team shooting like that. Like, that's like crazy numbers, right? Like, if you're lucky if you're shooting 40% from that range. So some good shot making, some interesting kind of weird kind of quirks in this game, and obviously the injuries are the big story going forward. But big time performances off the bench from Kevin Love and others for the Miami Heat. If those can continue, could that change the way that the Bucks approach this series going forward? We're going to tell you why that might be the case next. But first, David, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. And that's basically what it is. You're just making entries there, and it's you versus the numbers. You don't have to worry about other people or, what the line is or anything like that. It's just you versus those projections. And if you wind up winning that, then basically you've got a winning entry. It's that easy to play. You can just make an entry in 60 seconds or less. You pick 2 to 6 players. And again, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. And don't compete against other people. And it's any sport you want, whether it's the NBA, Major League Baseball, men's and women's college sports, Eurobasket, disc golf, boxing, you name it, you'll find it at PrizePicks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals. And they're currently operational in 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com and sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users also get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100 by downloading the PrizePicks app or going to prizepicks.com today.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. It is a Heat playoff win, which means it's time to get in the kitchen and whip up some credit cookies. David, it also doubles as a playoff win on my birthday. So what kind of cookies are you whipping up for this playoff win and for my birthday?
I should have known that. Happy birthday. Well, man, I'm sorry to say this, but today's cookies are bittersweet chocolate chip cookies with sea salt in them.
Ooh,
it's just like it's a tang of the sea salt. A tang of the sea salt there, but at the same time bittersweet because of the loss of Tyler Herro, who we will talk about in the next segment. But still a really good solid cookie. Chocolate chips, you can't go wrong with those.
Absolutely not, especially dark chocolate. Better than milk chocolate. I don't think that's a hot take. All right, credit cookies. Got to start with Jimmy Butler. There's a lot to hand out here, but let's just do the Jimmy Butler part here first, as we usually do lately. After Heat wins, 35 points on 15 of 27 shooting, 11 assists, 5 rebounds. He was a plus 17 in this game, and it felt like it. He played 43 minutes. Unbelievable game from him. Offensively, defensively, picking up the Drew Holiday assignment and limiting him. I don't know if Milwaukee was unprepared for that, because I felt like it kind of took them out of their actions a little, because they love to run Drew with pick and rolls, whether it's with Giannis or Bobby Portis or Brook Lopez, or doing some guard wing stuff with him and like whatever. Like, he's involved in basically all of their offense, right? And has been even more so this year with Chris Middleton sort of in and out of their lineup. And the fact that they stuck Jimmy on him defensively, I think maybe took him out of rhythm a little bit offensively. So big time two-way game from Jimmy Butler. 4 cookies seems about right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He was phenomenal. I was a little concerned that the offense was going to go too much through Jimmy, but I think it was all within the context of the game. He didn't try to force the issue. And more importantly, he was just really efficient offensively. Only 8 trips to the free throw line, missing 3 of those, strangely enough, a couple of those on technicals that he wound up missing. And yet 15 of 27 from the floor. That is as good a game as you're going to get. Aggressive and attacking Brook Lopez and kind of setting the tone, because then you wind up seeing Bam do it later on. Max Strus challenged him. Caleb Martin. Gabe Vincent even wound up attacking him at one point. It's not to say that you kind of dismiss Brook Lopez. He's a phenomenal defender, but you can time it just right. He's a little slow. He relies on his size, as he should, as a 7-footer, to block shots and impact your looks at the rim. But if you can time it effectively, and we know that Jimmy and his incredibly high IQ will be able to figure out the right timing, he looked very comfortable and say, "Oh, Brooks in my way. That's okay. I can still get my shot off over him." And he did, and he was hitting them more often than not. So really, really solid game from him, and just understanding the moment throughout the course of the game, playing 43 minutes. That's not great, but I think we're going to start to see that that trend is going to be more often and going in that direction throughout the rest of the playoffs. However long it lasts, Jimmy's probably going to want to play over 40 minutes a game.
You came into this series the underdog, and rightfully so. They were 9.5-point underdogs going into this game. It already feels like, game 6 and 7 against the Celtics in the conference finals, because you have nothing to lose if you're the Heat, right? Like, you're supposed to lose this series, so just throw everything on the table, right? All cards on the table, put it all out there. Jimmy Butler, go out and play 43 minutes, and if you could beat the Bucks, who knows what happens in round 2? But for now, like, just do it. You can't plan for a second round. You're not supposed to get there. So the best you could do is just try to win round 1. And if that's Jimmy playing 43 minutes a night, that's what it's going to be. You wonder how much the Tyler Herro injury impacted that. Duncan Robinson playing 6.5 minutes off the bench, starting that second half after Tyler went out. So it wasn't much of a factor in that second half. So you wonder if maybe Jimmy ramped up his minutes a little bit more. But, and like you said, the Bucks had made that run and Jimmy's in there and kind of making that separation at that point. Whatever. We'll see what happens going forward. But 4 cookies seems appropriate. Bam Adebayo, we're going to go with 2 cookies for him. Box score for him, 22 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. I thought he was really good, especially in that second half. It was a little bit of a slow start for him, but then he finally started to get into rhythm here, finding those opportunities at the free throw line. Brook Lopez, to your point, again, just sort of daring Bam Adebayo to shoot. And there was one possession in the fourth quarter where Bam gets the ball. He's right there at the 3-point line, maybe a foot inside the arc.
Yep.
And Brook is playing 8 feet off of him, just daring him to shoot.
He's in the paint.
Just straight up Caitlin Clarking him. And it was and Bam's all right. And instead of just sort of taking a step or 2 in and taking that shot right around that free throw line like he likes to get to, actually sort of backs up and then gets a running start. And then so he can get to the sweet spot in rhythm, sort of like a pick and pop right for him, and then just drains the shot. And Brook Lopez is all right. And I don't know, this isn't new. This is how Brook Lopez always guards Bam Adebayo. He has for the 4 games his teams have played this season and even before that. But Bam has developed that jumper. It's a real weapon. I don't know. Depending on how long this series goes and how long and how much Bam could take advantage of that drop coverage, you do wonder if Brook Lopez is going and the Milwaukee Bucks are going to adjust. But Mike Budenholzer, as we know, does not adjust. He kind of just sticks with his plan for better or worse. And look, he's won a championship that way. He's got the best player in the world in Giannis, or at least did for 11 minutes in this game. So you can sometimes afford to do that. And like I said, it worked out. They won a championship 2 years ago by doing just this. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if those opportunities are there this whole series and how Bam takes advantage of them. He did in the second half.
I think they will be, and I think we're going to start to see Bam build off of the momentum from today's game. I think we're going to see a more aggressive version of him in game 2, especially with the understanding that Tyler's not going to be available. So he knows what's at stake more. I could see Bam probably deferring more, saying, well, maybe, even if my shot's not going early on, I know somebody's going to step up, a gifted scorer, a bucket getter like Tyler. Jimmy's going to do his thing, Kevin, etc. Everybody's going to wind up finding their scoring, and then he could just kind of do what he does best, kind of just go into the shadows and impact the game defensively, forcing turnovers, doing so many different things as a playmaker, not necessarily scoring, but he understood it. He made the shift in game, and 17 points in the second half. That's not That's not something you can just easily dismiss. You know, the
No, of
fact that he
course not.
was understanding that 11 points in the third quarter. Again, when they were looking to continue to build off that lead, when they were looking to counter Chris Middleton as he was catching fire right there, like he did everything possible. And he saw the spacing between him and Lopez. And he said, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of it. And I think we're going to start to see that more often. And I would say what we saw from him in the first half is not something that we're likely to see throughout the rest of this playoff series.
You think it'll be more like the second half?
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a much more aggressive version. Yes. And they need it. I think he understands it. And I think that's what we're going to see moving forward.
And a big part of it was Gabe Vincent. So, Bam, I don't know, 2 cookies to him. We're going to give 2 cookies to Gabe Vincent as well. He was a big part of helping unleash Bam because with Tyler Herro out, they couldn't really obviously could not get to the Tyler Herro Bam Adebayo pick and roll. They've developed so much chemistry over the course of this regular season. But Gabe Vincent steps in. He plays 33 minutes in this game, 15 points on 6 shots, 6 assists to 2 turnovers, which is that's like a Chris Paul ratio almost. He was phenomenal, and specifically in that fourth quarter, getting those side pick and rolls and those pocket passes to Bam, setting up Bam when it wasn't just Bam backpedaling and then rolling into Brook Lopez in isolation. Gabe Vincent creating those pick and roll opportunities and getting Bam involved with that pocket pass again was huge. It was in rhythm. He set up Bam. There's a reason, I guess, that Gabe Vincent is Bam Adebayo's best friend on the team. They looked like they had that chemistry tonight, man. Like, he was awesome. He was absolutely awesome. 2 credit cookies to him.
And that was after picking up early fouls, and I thought maybe he'd be limited, and Caleb Martin going in for Gabe early in the game. And and I thought, oh, okay, well, we're going to see a bad Gabe game. And he made the change as well. Like, this is what's if there's a big takeaway from all this outside of everything we've also talked about, it's the fact that Miami understood what was happening over the course of the game and responding in a way that they have not regularly done during the season itself. Like, we saw them falter against the Hawks, even though they wound up making their comeback and then kind of just giving up at the end. They understood what was at stake. They took advantage of every opportunity, whether it was Gabe, Bam, or somebody else. And that's what's really impressive about tonight's win.
We got 2 more cookies to give out. We're going to give 1 to Caleb Martin. 15 points off the bench on 5 of 7 shooting. He was involved on the boards, 3 rebounds. Doesn't look like a lot, but he was fighting. He was contesting. He was mucking things up in the paint. So his impact was felt in a typical Caleb Martin way. And then 1 to Kevin Love, who we need to talk about a little bit more. 23 minutes for Kevin Love off the bench, 18 points, 4 of 7 from 3-point range. And then maybe the most important play in the series, injuring Giannis. And so you don't want to give him a cookie for that, but
no.
Let's win this series, it's going to be because
let's focus on the charges he took there. And I think it's like a legitimate
also, he got
weapon
screwed on that. They called that a defensive foul on him when Giannis.
Oh, against the Giannis injury?
Yeah. Didn't they call that?
He was moving a little bit. He was sliding a little bit. He was sliding. He's kind of slid into Giannis, which is kind of what, why he went ass over tea kettle there. No pun intended. But I think he was just really impactful. And I know I've said that about a couple of different players because it's true. It was a total team effort. He said that in the Bally's broadcast after the game, how much he was impressed by how everybody wound up playing their role so well and stepping up. He was a guy who did it as well, like hitting those shots, something that we have not seen from him, but he looked comfortable doing so, putting the ball down on the floor, making plays, finding the right, cutter, finding somebody open from the perimeter, and doing a pretty good job defensively. And on the boards, he was a monster. With Brook Lopez, despite the size advantage that's clearly in Brook's favor, he's not very mobile. And I think Love, as good a defender, a positional defender as he is, did a pretty good job of just bodying up. He did a pretty good job on Bobby Portis as well, who was a huge X factor in Milwaukee's favor. I think it was just such a really, really good game from him because every time he was out there, it seemed like he was able to push Miami's lead a little bit more, give them a little bit more of a cushion, whether it was a big rebound or a big play or a big shot. There were different moments throughout the course of the game that Love really wound up stepping up. I was a little surprised, honestly, that we didn't see more late in the fourth quarter. I know that's not part of Spo's normal rotation, but given how great
there was a few minutes there though, with Bam and Kevin on the floor together, I like those lineups quite a bit.
Absolutely.
To your point, Kevin Love was a +5 in terms of pushing Miami's lead in the minutes that he was in there. And I just do wonder how this changes the series going forward if Kevin Love is able to have this because they were giving him those 3-point shots, 4 of 7 from 3-point range. And it was similar to the way that they were defending Bam. Bam's going to try to get into that 15-foot range, but in that drop coverage, that 3-pointer is going to be there for Kevin Love too, right? When he's going up against Bobby Portis is going to drop. Brook Lopez is going to drop. When they run Kevin and pick and pops with somebody like Jimmy Butler, both defenders are basically going with Jimmy. The Bucks did their plan was to take away the paint from Jimmy Butler. It did not work with Jimmy Butler getting 35 points. So, you wonder how Milwaukee's going to adjust going forward. But I would be surprised if Mike Budenholzer said the guy that we need to take away is Bam's outside jumper and Kevin Love's 3-point shooting, and we're actually going to let Jimmy get to the paint. Like, I would be very shocked if that was the game plan. You know what I mean? And so these things are going to be there going forward, I think, for Kevin Love. There's ways to kind of play it in between a little bit more. They were sort of aggressively playing off of Kevin Love and Bam Adebayo to what we were talking about earlier. You could tighten that up a little bit and still try to take stuff away from Jimmy and Bam getting to the basket. But if they're going to be this aggressive, that's going to be there. And Kevin Love having this kind of game in game one, it's a get-right game. It's a confidence game. The Heat franchise high, like you said, in points scored overall. Again, you don't want to say just because of it's one playoff game. The game two is going to be a lot different than game one. That's just the way the playoffs work. But if you're the Miami Heat, there's definitely things you feel good about off this game and things that you're hoping to build off of going into game two. Can the Heat win another game this series without Tyler Herro? We'll talk about that next. But first, David, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Built. If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. What you need to try is Built. If you're looking for a healthy snack choice but you don't want to compromise taste, then the best thing for you, again, is Built bars. Healthy and they taste amazing. They're just so good for you and they taste great. And what's the secret? Well, they're 100% covered in real chocolate and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, and so many more. I don't know how they do it. It's just amazing macros, and at the same time, they just got everything you're looking for in a protein bar: 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait to get a box anymore. For years, we've been telling you go to Built.com. You can still do that, but now you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and get your specialty flavors. Get those at Built.com. Go to your nearest Walmart, go to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built bars, whether it's cookies and cream or double chocolate bar, or I'm sure they have so many others I can't even remember right now, coconut puff. But if you're close to a Sam's Club, you can run and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie, batter puff, and churro puff. You can thank me later. So many great options, but go to Built.com or grab your box at your nearest Walmart or Sam's Club today.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every day or tomorrow, we will be back with a more in-depth breakdown of what went right for the Miami Heat and what they could do against the Milwaukee Bucks going forward in the series, and updates on Giannis and Tyler Herro as well. Also, you can reach Locked On Heat, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Thank you to everybody who wrote in questions on Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat.
Quick programming note, we should say, of course, we're going to be providing recaps after every game. For as long as Miami's playoff run goes, we'll both be at the games on Saturday and Monday at the Kaseya Center. So expect recaps right after the final buzzer on those games. And, of course, we'll be there for away games as well and filling content in between. So if you're looking for great playoff coverage, this is the place to do it.
Not just weekdays in the playoffs, right? We're on that playoff schedule. All hands on deck, 48 minutes.
Right.
Let's go. We're doing weekends too.
No injuries allowed. Next man up,
if I break my right hand, I'll be on the podcast. Ivan writes in using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Who should they start in place of Tyler Herro? So the Heat went with Duncan Robinson on short notice. Obviously, Tyler Herro doesn't come back in the game. X-rays, broken hand. Spo goes with Duncan Robinson. I think that was sort of my guess was where he was going to go. If you look at what it is that the Heat were trying to accomplish in this game, they're not trying to match up with size. They're not even really trying to match up defensively with the Milwaukee Bucks. They basically said, to win this series, we got to shoot 60% from three-point range. So let's just put our shooters out there. And they went ahead with Duncan Robinson, but obviously the other option would have been Victor Oladipo. They could have even went with Caleb Martin because we did see some he's been primarily on the wing. We even saw some minutes with him at 2 guard in this game at different pockets of this game. But they went with Duncan Robinson. 6.5 minutes, made a 3-pointer. Defensively wasn't great. The Heat were outscored by 5 when he was on the court. Obviously not on him completely, but do you think we see Duncan Robinson start in game 2, or do you think that maybe they go in a different direction and maybe go with Victor Oladipo?
No, I don't think Oladipo plays. If he didn't play today, I don't see him getting minutes at any other point. And I know that he is definitely I think that's definitely at this stage he's an emergency break glass kind of situation there. and he's going to go out there basically for his defense as well. His offense is so erratic, and as we've mentioned many times on the show, unfortunately, he does wind up playing outside of Miami's flow and system to a certain degree, freelancing, looking for his opportunities. It works sometimes, and most of the times it doesn't, and so it could wind up derailing everything that Miami's looking to accomplish in terms of getting the right looks, getting the right shooters open, etc. So I don't think he's going to get minutes. I wouldn't mind seeing Duncan do it, but I think it's going to be like one of two changes. Like you're going to have to tweak the line. You can't have him and Max out there at the same time. I don't think that's going to work. So I don't know if Love is the right option either. I would say maybe Caleb and Duncan replacing
The other
Max
option
and
is
Tyler.
you play Kyle Lowry and Gabe Vincent together.
Yeah,
you can go in that.
I thought about that.
But they've been
lots
really,
of different options, none of them great. You know, there's nobody who slides in immediately and does exactly what Tyler does. I could see Duncan doing it just because he provides that floor spacing, and that's a legit threat. I think the Bucks fully aware of what Duncan's capable of because he's shot, he's had big games against them in the past, and so you want that floor spacing ability. But what he gives up defensively and between him and Max together, not ideal.
My guess would be Duncan Robinson only because that's what they did in the second half.
And that's also within the course of the game too. Like I don't know that with a couple days to plan it out a little bit better. That's your guess. Is it Duncan stays in the starting lineup?
I just don't know what the other option is. I'm with you on Victor Oladipo. I don't think Spoelstra is comfortable enough to start Victor Oladipo. On the TNT broadcast, Reggie Miller was basically like, I don't understand why they started Duncan Robinson. You've got Victor Oladipo on the bench. It's a little bit, it's Pacers love. It's also not paying attention for 3 years and in the Heat not being on national TV, maybe a little bit of that. But I don't think you can go Oladipo to start games.
No.
He's not a good enough shooter. You need to be able to take advantage of that drop coverage and what it is that the Bucks are going to give you. And Duncan Robinson's the best player available for that. I think that they want to keep Caleb coming off the bench. They've been really adamant about keeping Kyle Lowry off the bench because you're able to manage his minutes. He only played 18.5 minutes tonight. So I don't know that Duncan Robinson is the right answer, but he might be the best one at this point, especially if you want to keep that bench trio of Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, and Kevin Love in place, which has been so effective for them. Like that has been such a big strength of theirs since they kind of got to that part of the rotation. And especially in game one, if you're trying to sort of recreate that and maintain balance against what is still a very deep Milwaukee team, even if Giannis is out the way that he was in that second half, it's a team with Joe Ingles, Bobby Portis, Wesley Matthews, Javon Carter, Jay Crowder. Like all those guys are coming off their bench, And so you've got to be able to maintain some of that balance throughout the course of the game. And so I think that Duncan Robinson makes a lot of sense. There's chemistry with him and Bam Adebayo. There's more playmaking now, I guess, on Jimmy and Bam. And if Gabe can sort of recreate what he was doing in that fourth quarter, he can obviously pick up some of the slack without Tyler Herro. But Duncan Robinson might be the best option, especially if you're looking at the only path to beating the Bucks, which is shooting like you did tonight or close to it. Duncan Robinson gives you a better chance than Caleb Martin, a better chance certainly than Victor Oladipo, and probably a better chance even than Kyle Lowry of sort of trying to recreate tonight's shooting performance. So I think it's Duncan.
I agree. The positives of what Duncan does in terms of what you just laid out and his floor spacing and everything else like that. I think that's why he will get more minutes. And I don't think it's defensively, if he winds up getting into foul trouble, well, you took a chance, didn't work out. It's not that big a deal. But if he winds up contributing offensively, again, just drawing guys away, creating those open floor lanes to the rim for Jimmy and or Bam, like those things are far outweigh whatever problems he might have, even if he's not wind up hitting his 3-point shots.
And I guess if you're the Heat, you hope that Giannis is a little bit limited with this lower back injury, because that's the other problem is if Duncan Robinson and Max Strus are in that, and even Gabe Vincent, I mean, it's Giannis, for God's sakes. Like anybody that's a little bit that's smaller than him, he's going to go after.
Yeah,
it gives them a lot of soft spots to sort of attack. But that was still the case with Tyler Herro. I think Herro's a better defender than Duncan Robinson.
Tyler was lost.
But it doesn't.
Trying to cover Grayson Allen. I think Duncan can do as good a job as Tyson did. Yeah, so I don't see why he wouldn't be that problematic.
And especially against Giannis again. Like to Giannis, like the difference between Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson is like a fly versus a mosquito in front of him. It doesn't matter. Like it's just
pretty
like,
big.
It's Giannis, I guess. This last question comes from Gilbert M. at Gilbert M. Writes in. Let's say Giannis returns the next game. Can the Heat at least put up a fight for the rest of the series, even without Tyler Herro? We've sort of answered this question a little bit already, but let's say Giannis comes back. He's there game 2 Wednesday night. Do you think the Heat could put up a fight this series, considering that Tyler Herro's postseason is over?
Absolutely. I don't think that this team, and okay, I'll hedge that bet a little bit by saying that this team has been so hard to predict, but they showed enough today to at least be encouraging for a one game situation here where I think they understand the sense of urgency, everything that's at stake, so many different off the court factors that they played so well and just showed the kind of integrity that we expected this team to have all season long. And so I think they're going to go in there looking to create an obvious edge. A one game edge is not enough. If you could go up two games, that's as much of a cushion as you're going to get.
And then you come home for 2 games. You're predicting a sweep, David?
No, God, no, nothing like that. But I mean, I could see a game 2 win a lot more easily than I did 2 days ago, just because of the nature of how they play today. And regardless of the Giannis situation, I think you can do enough to kind of counter what he does, and you lean into the offense as they have over the last 10 games of the regular season. You do enough, you get the right players to hit shots at the right moments, and if they step up and play their roles as effectively as they did today, I could see a way of winning not just game 2, but another game in the series for sure.
Yeah, even despite this win, and it's a fun win, and it's great to talk about, and I'm having a great time right now. But I still don't expect the Heat to win this series. I think that would still be a little crazy, especially with Tyler Herro getting hurt. Like, that's a big loss. It's not as big. Yeah. If you told me before the series, hey, you get to trade Giannis and Tyler Herro, both of them are out of the lineup, would you take it? And you said, yeah. But Tyler Herro is going to be done, and it sounds like Giannis could be back for Wednesday night, so that's not necessarily the case for this series. I trust Giannis to get this thing done. Back injury or not, he's one of the greats for a reason, right? These guys just tend to get it done. So we'll see what happens. Can the Heat, to the question, can the Heat put up a fight? Yeah. Can they put up a fight? I always expected them to put up a fight. I just don't expect them to win the series.
It was questionable. I mean? Yeah, it was questionable, though. I mean, there were moments throughout the regular season, certainly, where we're like, oh, does this team...
I mean, this is a team that just lost to the Hawks and got flatly embarrassed and got out-rebounded by a bazillion against them. Right. So that could happen. Like, that same thing can happen against Milwaukee. They're still huge with or without Giannis. So, and look, they shoot 60% from three-point range. Is there a regression coming in game 2 where they shoot 12%? Like, that's very possible. That version of the Heat exists more often than this version of the Heat does, right? And so if you think about what you expect from this group, that to me is more of expectation than shooting 60%, 50%, 40% from three-point range, right? And so, but we'll see, right? Like, this was the game plan, right? You're not going to beat Milwaukee at their own game. This is why they never were going to size up with Kevin Love and Bam Adebayo again. They were never going to go in that route because you can't beat Milwaukee at what they do. You can only hope to beat Milwaukee by doing it this way. And I think they're going to continue to try to do it this way. And that's the only route. It's not ideal. It's not a guarantee. They're not even the favorites, and they should not be. But if there's a narrow path to winning this series, that's what it's going to be. I think they'll put up a fight. It's Jimmy, it's Bam. The Bucks don't want to play the Miami Heat. They're physical. They're gonna throw elbows. They're gonna bruise you, just like we already saw in game 1. Like, this is the expectation, is that when you play the Miami Heat, you're probably gonna come away injured in some way, shape, or form. And so you've got that going for you if you're the Miami Heat. But yeah, can they put up a fight? The answer is yes. Do I expect them to win this series? No, but it's a good win in game 1. And it does change things quite a bit. The game 1 win, obviously stealing home court, changes things. And then the Giannis injury, which we'll monitor going forward, obviously changes things. So who knows what's going to happen? We'll be covering this series from now until the end of it and however long it goes. In-depth previews, interviews, recaps after every game of this series. We've got it all here at Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Every day, we are going to be back tomorrow with a brand new show, breaking down everything in greater detail and in more depth here on Locked On Heat. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it. And feel better, Tyler.